So thank you very much for being here. I'm Rory Linehan, the Director of Infrastructure Policy Advancement for the United States at Bentley Systems. I'm the Summit Director, but don't let the Australian accent fool you. I've been lucky to be living, breathing, and working US infrastructure for the past 10 years. And what a decade it has been for US infrastructure over the past 10 years. We've learned a lot, I think, collectively as a country. And the last 4 years, we've made a lot of progress, including with the Bipartisan Infrastructure Investment Jobs Act. We'll be talking today a lot about kind of what the future of US infrastructure looks like. And hopefully, we'll all be able to learn from each other as well as our terrific speakers. It'd be remiss of me not to thank our incredible team. So you've probably seen them out and about, but Fiona, Daniel, Mark, and of course, the entire Bentley team that's here today. Love to thank, please give them a round of applause. Love to thank also, the speakers, moderators, AV team, catering, and the wonderful folks at IBM for working behind the scenes to put together today's summit. And speaking of partners, please join me in thanking IBM for this stunning venue. This is just phenomenal to have this in the heart of New York City. We're really, really lucky and very grateful. I'd also like to thank Ross and the team at United for Infrastructure, who, after running a phenomenal infrastructure week last week, decided to pony up again and come to New York and keep the Infrastructure Roadshow going. So we're very grateful and thank you very much. And I'd also like to, of course, thank our other partners, the Women in Infrastructure Network, Sidewalk Infrastructure Partners, and the countless others who have been behind the scenes putting together today's program. You have the Wi-Fi code on the screen there. There's also a QR code, which is eminently easier. So if you find that, put it on and you'll get access to Wi-Fi. We have a very full program today, so we encourage you to lean in, to listen, to learn, but really importantly, to share your perspectives and insights. The magic of TIP happens when everybody is interacting and engaging with each other and learning right across the day. So please do lean in, share your feedback, comments as we go. And on that note, I'd like to invite Andy Jackson, the sales lead for the Americas at IBM, to the microphone. Thank you, Andy.
Can everybody hear me? Yeah. Awesome. Perfect. So first and foremost, hello, everybody. Welcome. Welcome to New York City. Welcome to IBM. And welcome to One Madison, our new flagship marquee office here in the heart of Manhattan. So as Roy said, my name's Andy Jackson. I am the Asset Lifecycle Management Maximum Sales Lead for the Americas. If you need to do a little bit of name association, for those of you in the Americas or in the US here, if you pull out a nice, crisp $20 bill, I'm that handsome devil looking straight back at you, all right? So I won't pretend to be an infrastructure expert like everybody here in the room, but I can tell you that I have been engaged in a number of infrastructure projects over the last 21 years, my tenure here at IBM, from large cities to small cities, from rail and roads through to oil and gas and natural resources, right? I like to believe IBM plays a significant role in improving infrastructure, not only in this city with customers of ours like the New York Port Authority, but in the US and throughout the world. We as IBM work closely with our partners like Bentley and have vast experience and tools designed to optimize asset management, improve operational efficiency, and enhance the structural health of various infrastructure components and projects. Right? I hope you enjoy the session. I hope you enjoy the summit. I hope the sun comes out and you are able to enjoy the city. I'm going to be around all day. If you need to chat, you want to hear more about IBM here and what we're doing in the city, by all means, come find me, reach out, and I'm happy to have that conversation. So thanks again, and over to Mark.
No, I'm good. So good morning, everybody. How are you? I get to say good morning, New York. That's quite a fitting start, and obviously, as you can see and hear from my voice, I'm not of these shores. And yes, I am responsible for the bad weather. I did bring it with me from London. So I'm responsible for TIP. I'm the Vice President of the Infrastructure Policy Advancement team that delivers a number of these around the world. Believe it or not, 2 weeks ago, I was saying good morning, Sydney. So this program actually started, and I'll go a little bit more into what TIP is, or Transforming Infrastructure Performance Summit. is and where it came from. But I want to start with a phrase. And it's a phrase I actually closed out Singapore 2 years ago, 2 years in August. Is the magic we're looking for in the work we're avoiding? And I'll explain that a little bit more, but I want that to sit and resonate with you all. So what is TIP? TIP was a UK government leadership program. It was done to build in confidence and resilience into the pipeline. You know, we've all been in work. My background, and I'll explain that a little bit more, is a quantity surveyor and what quantity surveyor does. But you used to have a lot of work, no work, a lot of work, no work, and then went through the political cycles. So this was very much a program to build in confidence, build in leadership, build in skills and everything. And the government wrote a fantastic paper, but we all know with government papers, it is a paper. And it's very much about communication. So we started this off in London, 2022. I was walking around very much like an expectant father, hoping for people to turn up because it was the first time it did, and we got a full house. And it has just blossomed and bloomed from that. And I have to thank David Porter's in the room, the Institution of Civil Engineers and Bentley Systems for giving me the freedom to do this. I sit down every time we do one of these events with a blank sheet of paper, work with the local experts like Rory, like Daniel, to actually make sure we tailor the outcomes. And the reason why this event has become an international leadership lighthouse. Nice phrase. But this is very much about you, knowledge sharing. It's global best practice. It's not UK best practice. We have the excellent Year in Infrastructure Awards at Bentley System, which last year we had over 250 projects apply. So I get a database every year to go through and check and look and see what leadership is going on globally. So it's a true global leadership. Why is that important? And why is it important to me? So I'm a QS. I was asked last night what a QS is because it's quite unique. So I can tell you they're the most popular person on site. They are a lawyer and an accountant. So as you can imagine, at any dinner party, they're welcomed at it. So on time and on budget was really important to me because it was my job. And I'll give you some of my background. I worked in the Middle East. I worked on Chaplock Airport in Hong Kong. I worked on the Olympics. And by the way, when you're doing the Olympics, the date for finish is not very flexible. There is a set date that you have to finish on. And then I went on to Crossrail and became part of the innovation team. And this is why that phrase at the beginning starts. For those, there is some of you that may need to Google this in the room. I started that project on a Nokia 6210 because the iPhone wasn't available. So, you know, I was really cutting edge technology. And I've seen over the last couple of years, 10 years, you know, your iPhones now have LiDAR. I mean, technology has just come on in leaps and bounds. And we're still looking for the magic. We've got the magic set, we've got the tools, and whether you're a politician, whether you're a financier, whether you're a lawyer, accountant, whatever you want to call me, whether you're a consultant, you have those tools at your fingertips. So why isn't the magic happening? So that is what all these tips are about. It's about exchanging ideas, exchanging knowledge, and exchanging leadership. What, as Rory said, what the magic here is you. So ask questions, be involved, post on social media. The more interaction we get, the more likely we'll be back, and the more better the industry will be. So it is down to you, each and every one of you, to make the change. So with that, let's say thank you. I'm going to keep this very informal, so when I introduce people up during the day, it'll be first name and companies, because I want you to engage with them and put no barriers in front. But with that, I'd like to hand to Ross.
Thank you very much, Mark. I'm really honored to be here at this event today, to have worked with Mark, with Rory, the entire team at Bentley to put this event together. They've been phenomenal to work with, and I'm really excited to have all of you in the room. My name is Ross Van Dongen. I'm the director of an organization called United for Infrastructure. United for Infrastructure is a national coalition of partners from all sectors of infrastructure development, several of which you're going to hear from today that I'm honored to part with: the American Society of Civil Engineers, Stantec, Meridium, Sidewalk Infrastructure Partners, Bentley, the U.S. Water Alliance, a massive coalition of conveners, of brilliant minds that represent each sector of infrastructure, all pushing toward the same thing. The understanding that we need to continue to invest in this country in our infrastructure systems, because that means more connectivity across our communities, that means more resiliency across all of our systems, increased national security, incredible economic competitiveness. That all happens when we invest in our infrastructure here nationally. The IIJA was an incredible opportunity for us in 2021. As Rory mentioned last night, a $1.2 trillion investment in our infrastructure here nationally. We need to continue that level of investment because the IIJA, simply put, was merely a down payment. To make sure that we increase job creation, to increase our investment here, we need to push our members of Congress, our senators, our representatives, to really think outside the box, to think robustly about how we deliver infrastructure here domestically. And you, brilliant minds here in the room, are going to help us think about how we do that. As Rory mentioned, last week was National Infrastructure Week here in the United States. We had an amazing convening in DC that held several conversations, of which we're going to hear a lot about today as well. Thinking about permitting reform, something we know we need desperately here in this country so we can get these dollars to ground faster and get projects moving a lot faster. Thinking about how we capitalize on our private sector and our private capital partners here, how we innovate project financing more to deliver those projects better. So we're going to have those conversations here today, which I'm very excited about. And we're also going to think about how we work together at a state level, at the local level, at the county level, how our private sector partners and our public sector partners come together. So I just really appreciate all of you being here for this moment, to what Mark said, to get engaged, to work with each other, to ask questions, and the networking breaks, go up to each other, dialogue with each other, think about what you heard, and then come back to the stage ready to engage more this afternoon. You'll be hearing from me a little bit later on today to kind of summarize what we've been talking about, what we've been hearing, what some of those key concepts and ideas that are really jumping out at you. But I'm excited just to turn it back to Mark so we can really get on with the show today. So just give yourselves a round of applause again. Thank you for being here, and on with the day.
Right. Thank you, mate. Right, so let us start. Time check, are we doing okay, Rory, or? Time? You're looking at the agenda? Ooh, just on. So, right, my first sort of introduction and first guest to the stage that I'd like to ask is the Lieutenant Governor of Maryland, Lieutenant Governor Miller. She will be interviewed by Anthony Oliver. We're turning this into a podcast as well. So Anthony runs a very successful podcast in the UK. As I said, we're here to learn from you very much. So, Anthony, please
Thank you very much.
The stage. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you very much, Mark. As Mark said, my name is Anthony Oliver. I'm a journalist from the UK, you note from the accent. And I also host, as Mark says, the weekly infrastructure podcast. If you haven't come across it, be very afraid. You've got 115 episodes to get stuck into. So, fill your boots is my gift to the industry. So all good there. I'm recording this particular episode of the podcast, and it is my pleasure to welcome Lieutenant Governor Aruna Miller to the Transforming Infrastructure Performance Summit today, but also to share her experiences of the recent collapse of the Francis Scott Key Bridge, which I know has got a lot of learning. So, Lieutenant Governor Miller, welcome to the Transforming Infrastructure Performance Summit, and also welcome to the Infrastructure Podcast.
Well, thank you so much for having me. And I just want to say to everyone, good morning. And I know we're about to approach Memorial Day weekend, so I wish all of you a very happy Memorial Day. And before we get started, I just want to say, number one, thank you to the Bentley Systems for hosting today's event. It is so important to talk about infrastructure, right? As I always say, transportation infrastructure, it's an instrument of freedom, equity, environment, creating jobs, you name it, quality of life. So that's why it's so really, it's an honor to see all of you here to exchange ideas and learn from one another. So thank you for having me.
Well, as an engineer turned politician and as an engineer turned journalist, I'm looking forward to perhaps nerding out a bit on some of the details of the bridge, which will be very exciting. But a bit of background before we start. I mean, the collapse of the Francis Scott Key Bridge in March 2024 was a devastating infrastructure failure, perhaps one of the most devastating in the US history. And in seconds, a vital piece of infrastructure just disappeared into the river. And it was a pivotal moment with perhaps profound implications for Maryland's infrastructure, economy, and society. Given your background in engineering, as I say, I mean, hopefully you're going to give us a unique perspective, but just take us back to start with. Take us back to March 2024, and just take us through the immediate aftermath. I mean, how do you deal with that kind of catastrophic event, from the perspective of the emergency responders and also the state officials?
No, thank you for that question. Anthony, this is what I say. There are moments in our life that are so deep, it divides our timeline from before and after. March 26, 2024 was one of those days that really changed the timelines of everyone in Maryland that experienced the collapse of the FSK Bridge. It was a day of great tragedy as well as great courage. And let me tell you what happened on that day. Within 2 minutes before the dolly crashed into the FSK Bridge, we had the Maryland Transportation Authority police immediately who responded to the Mayday call, 2 minutes before, went over to the bridge, make sure the bridge was closed down so no further traffic could get through. But tragically, we lost 6 transportation workers as a result. Within hours after the collapse of the bridge, we had our first responders and divers that dove into the waters despite the darkness, the coldness, despite them risking their lives in order to save those that were lost in the water. Within days after the collapse, we set up the Unified Command Center, which included 6 different organizations that came together.
But don't underestimate, I suppose, the danger of that initial emergency response, because that's a very dangerous river. It's a very fast-flowing river, and there's an awful lot of debris in the river there. So
that's right.
But tragically, I suppose, it is always a tragedy when an incident like this, you end up with people that get killed. And I know that the state has done an awful lot of work to support the families of those workers. I mean, tell us about how do you approach that?
Well, you have to have a really good leader who is setting the tone for the entire state of Maryland, and that would be Governor Westmore of Maryland. Look, leadership isn't about being loud. It's about being grounded. It's about being measured, compassionate, and that's how we approached this whole situation. So what did we do? He set up 4 directives for us, right? One is to make sure we take care of the families of the victims. Number 2, make sure we open up that federal channel. Number 3, make sure that we're able to support the workers, that were impacted by this. And number 4, to build the Key Bridge again. So the families, we took care of them by being there for them, right? There's nothing that any of us can do to change the loss that they felt.
Because we, as infrastructure professionals, you talk about the assets, but fundamentally, the people who are using those assets, the workers, the public using it, they are the most important thing that always got to be on your mind.
Absolutely.
I mean, in the aftermath, obviously Maryland and the federal agencies, they've launched you might call it an unprecedented recovery program because of the scale of the collapse and also the scale of the implications. And a huge rebuilding effort with emergency relief, economic support and long-term infrastructure planning taking central stage. I mean, with the Port of Baltimore out of action for several months, I mean, how did that disrupt the state's economy? Because you can't really kind of consider how suddenly you can take a port out of action like that.
It's quite significant. Look, the Port of Baltimore is not just important to the state of Maryland's economy, it's to the entire nation. Right. Because it is part of the supply chain that it provides, the jobs that it creates, and furthermore, inflation, right? If you break the supply chains, inflation's gonna go up. So the Port of Baltimore, what's really great about it is we have 6 public terminals and 33 private terminals. Yeah. And it really is 3 different hubs that it has there, from agriculture to automobiles to construction equipment. In fact, when it comes to agriculture and automobiles, it is the #1 in the nation for exporting and importing at that port.
So given what you know now about what you had to do to put that asset back into operation, were you aware of how key that bridge was to making that whole thing run?
Absolutely. I mean, for example, the average daily traffic along that bridge is 40,000 vehicles.
Yeah.
And you're talking about trucks and others that could use that to move like hazmat materials that cannot go through the federal channel.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean,
the obvious
lives
question,
being disrupted
yeah,
in every way.
where's all that traffic gone?
Well, it's got to be detoured, right? And this is what transportation engineers and people in this field come to deal with, that nothing is ever permanent, that you got to be agile, you got to be nimble, you got to be able to change to the situation that you are presented with.
And do you think, I mean, obviously you would never plan that kind of event, but having been through it and having put those detours in place and got people used to going and doing different things, will any of those, will you still have 40,000 vehicles on the bridge when it reopens?
That's right. Probably have more.
Right. But do people get used to this new kind of environment of having to avoid the bridge, etc.?
I think, they have to deal with the situation because there is no other alternative other than going through the detours.
Right, yeah.
Unless they want to get on a little boat and go across the channel. I don't think that's an option.
Yeah.
But
of course, one of the things which is, a very real consequence is the port's closure impacted thousands of jobs. I mean, what specific programs did you have to put in place to support those workers who no longer had a job to do?
absolutely. Speaking of jobs, there was over 20,000 jobs that were directly impacted as a result of this, collapse at the port. And there's over 240,000 direct and indirect jobs that were impacted. So we set up 5 emergency relief programs in which we gave out $42 million worth of relief funds to 3,300 different workers and 245 small business owners. So we came in full force. We set up a website centralized so every individual that's impacted and business leader could see just what kind of resources that are available from the federal, state, and local levels. We made sure that we had daily calls with the small business owners. We made sure that they got exactly the information hot off the press so they know exactly how to plan their lives, right? We brought in all of government to be able to talk about what the impacts of the port is on a daily basis with them.
And was that kind of response, was that on a predetermined risk register or a predetermined kind of plan of action that you had within the State Department?
Well, I'll tell you what, Anthony, one thing is a crisis never comes with a predetermined plan or a script.
Right.
You have to act immediately, compassionately, and with great leadership. And that's what happened during this crisis. People came together, they put their egos aside, they collaborated, they did partnership together, and they knew exactly what the vision ahead was.
Yeah.
And that is to deliver for the people of Maryland, the workers, open up that channel, and make sure everyone remains safe during this process.
We'll talk a bit about learnings a bit later on, but I imagine, for the entire team there, every day is a learning day.
Absolutely. And it was an extraordinary time of learning and growing.
Yeah. I suppose as well as the port workers, there is a whole supply chain that relies on that bit of infrastructure. There's a whole lot of small businesses. I imagine there's a lot of large businesses as well. But local businesses, especially small enterprises, they were significantly impacted. How do you go about helping that particular sector?
Well, again, we had a centralized website where every one of those small business owners can go to see what services and what relief funds that are available to them. And, as I said, we met on Zoom calls twice a week. The governor talked to leaders on a daily basis so they understood exactly what was coming down and they could ask the questions and we could have dialogue back and forth. It wasn't just us talking at them, but us hearing from them. What are your needs? How can we better address those needs? And it wasn't just one entity. It was federal, state, and local leaders coming together. It was private and public entities coming together. It was nonprofits. It was everybody. Places of worship trying to support the impacted workers and families.
Yeah, is there a time limit on that kind of support that you're offering?
Yes, so when we started off, we were able to go up to 13 weeks as far as giving out relief funds. And as far as still providing leave, there is no time limit, right?
Yeah.
Whenever Marylanders need us, we're there for them.
I mean, do you, as a politician, as somebody who's got an engineering background, do you see this as a huge kind of moment in your career, which is defining, I suppose? Yeah.
It certainly is. I mean, I must say that my alma mater immediately reached out to me, University of Missouri Science and Technology, and they said, wow, you're seeing in a moment of history right now of infrastructure. I mean, honestly, it was the biggest maritime disaster in Maryland, one of the biggest ones. So to be there at ground level and to work in partnership with everyone, you just can't write that in the history books, but you can learn from it.
Well, let's talk a bit about you and your background. I said that you're a politician. Used to be a civil engineer.
I'm still a civil
you're
engineer.
Apologies, yes. It never goes away. It never goes away. And you've been serving as the 10th Lieutenant Governor of Maryland since 2023. What prompted that change then? What took you out of the great world of engineering into the great world of politicians?
Yeah, so just to recap again, you can take the girl out of engineering, but you can't take the engineering out of the girl, okay?
Right.
So I'm still a civil engineer. But here's what it is. I say that sometimes you have plans for life, and other times life has plans for you. Look, I'm a total nerd. I'm an engineer, and never in my wildest dreams did I think I would be in political office. Never. But what I think prompted it is that I became a citizen in the year 2000. I'm an immigrant to this country. And I can remember how proud I was to go into the polling booth and vote for the very first time in my life. I mean, literally, I cried. And I came out and I thought, that's all I needed to do. Well, my candidate didn't end up winning in that presidential race. And then I finally realized, I was like, oh, well, I guess I need to be a lot more engaged. So I called up the local political party that I'm affiliated with, and I said, what can I do to help? And they said, come on in, volunteer. And I did that for 4 or 5 years, and eventually an opening came up, and they asked me to run. I politely declined. I said, thanks so much, but no thanks. I'm an engineer. I'm not an elected, politician. But others twisted my arm, and I ran. And
it's an interesting story because I spoke to, as a politician in the UK, Mike Reeder, who just got voted in to Parliament in the last elections, and his story is so similar in that he decided that what can he do? What can he do? Because I suppose one of the things I always feel is that both civil engineers and politicians, it's all about public service.
yes.
It's all about how do you make the outcomes for citizens better. I mean, that's how you see it, is it?
Absolutely. So when people say, how does engineering and political world even, melt together? And I say this, it's exactly what you just said, Anthony, is that engineering taught me there are no problems, only solutions. Policy making is the same way. When you serve in government, it's about coming up with solutions for the people and the constituents that you serve. And they go hand in hand together.
Yeah.
Only we're much more detail oriented, which I like.
Yeah. But I think one of the things that Mike also pointed out is it's hard to make that switch because there's a whole new world, there's a whole new language you need to learn in politics.
And I started off exactly like that. I had no idea when I became a Maryland State delegate, all the lingo that goes along with being a delegate. I mean, honestly, I felt like an imposter for the longest time. I'm like, should I be here? I feel like I'm in the wrong room. But you know what? Here's what I say. Each of you will walk into rooms that don't look like you, and you feel like you're not meant to be in those rooms. And I will say this to you. It's not a sign telling you you're not meant to be there. It's a force telling you you have to be there to complete that room.
So anyone that's thinking about it, you'd given them a real thumbs up. Go and seek your vocation in politics if that's what you want.
Absolutely. Just because you have a degree in engineering or whatever it may be, that doesn't mean that's the only lane you're going to be in. Life has a wonderful way of opening up so many other things for you.
But it's also interesting that we're here in this IBM building because you were born in India, your family moved to the US when you were 7, and your father worked for IBM.
He did in Poughkeepsie, New York.
Yeah, were you originally destined for a career in electronics then?
Well, let's put it this way. My dad told me I could be anything I wanted to be, an engineer or a doctor. Anyway, I decided to follow his footpath and became an engineer instead.
Yeah. Why civil engineering then?
Because I love the hands-on experience you get, right? Because you get this opportunity to be out in the field at the construction site. You get to see the product of your work, you know, and there's just something so gratifying about that. But more importantly, public service. I've been in public service my entire adult life, and I decided to do that because when you come to this country as an immigrant, you're so grateful for the opportunities that opened up to you, and it's my way of paying it forward.
Yeah, yeah. Well, because you worked for Montgomery County's Department for Transportation for 25 years, you helped improve highways, safety, and boosting access to public transport, which is a really kind of, it's a vital part of the whole economy and people's lives. And you also helped do some work improving and promoting active travel, I think. Is that a difficult thing in the US, promoting active travel?
Active travel, well, that means, you know, just about everyone, right? Yeah. When you think about transportation, you're not talking about just highways. You're talking about people who don't have, you know, cars to drive in. So you got to take a look at transit. You're talking about the ADA, Americans with Disability Act, to make sure those that are disabled can access everything that you and I can access.
Because it's a very car-dominated society around here.
It is, and we're trying to change that, right?
Get people on a bike, is that possible in Maryland?
Well, yes, bikes, sidewalks, and using public transit. Look, I'm a mother of 3 adult daughters, and I can tell you, New York City stole them, okay, because they all work here and they don't want to move back to Maryland. My oldest daughter, she's 33 years old, and she does not want to drive a car. She wants to take public transit. In fact, all of them do. So I think it's a different generation now. They want to have access to public transit as much as possible.
So it's not true. I mean, I as a Brit, we get told there's certain parts of the US you can get arrested for walking. That's not true.
Oh, okay. I hope not.
Okay.
Jaywalking.
No,
right?
well, maybe. Yeah. I mean, are there any bits of your career, I mean, you're 25 years as a civil engineer, what kind of stands out for you then? Obviously, public services is a real kind of overriding thing, but what projects, what things do you get involved with which stand out as defining in your career as an engineer?
Well, I'll tell you, one thing I learned in engineering is that any project that we build, it's never about just being in silos and drawing it up on a plan and then going ahead and doing it. At the end of the day, transportation is about people, right? And so I learned a lot that any project, and I used to run the Bikeways and Sidewalks program, and I thought, okay, a sidewalk, what's the big deal, right? It's a big deal. When you touch a blade of grass in people's yards in Potomac, Maryland, David, I know you're from there. Let me tell you, you would think we were building a highway in front of their house. But that's a good thing because the public is so engaged and they care so much about transportation and they really play a vital role. And it may extend the project because you gotta take care of all the details they say and fix the project. But at the end of the day, after you and I walk out after doing the project, they have to live with it. And that's important.
Because I suppose, I mean, we were talking earlier about the Hudson Tunnel here, the $16 billion project which New York's got underway, and those are really important for the economy of an area like this, but also making sure the sidewalks are fixed, making sure that the grass is cut. Those are really important parts of a civil engineer's world and also the management of the public realm.
Absolutely, it's a quality of life issue, right? To have all that together. It's part of being civil.
Do you miss it?
I do miss it. I do. That's why I'm so happy to be here. As soon as I got the invitation to come here, I said, I can't wait to come out and nerd out with my fellow engineers in this field.
But is it, I mean, do you miss the numbers side of it? Do you miss, or is it just the people?
It's all of it, you know, but I think it still comes into my role here because, of course, we have the Maryland Department of Transportation and there's so much infrastructure projects that the governor and I get involved in.
And of course, the work you do now, you're a member of the Democratic Party and you've previously served on the Maryland House of Delegates representing Legislative District 15 in Montgomery County. But you've worked to drive legislation to invest in STEM education, for instance, in Maryland. I mean, is that part of you trying to make sure that as a politician, you are making sure that the next generation of science and engineering professionals is coming through.
Absolutely. Look, if you take a look at our nation, even globally, in order for us to be competitive, we're going to have to focus in on science and technology. That's where the GDP is right now. And in Maryland, these are the lighthouse industries that we're focusing on, whether it's aerospace, defense, AI, quantum computing, bioscience, but all of it involves science and technology.
Yeah. And getting more women, of course, into science and technology is an
100%.
issue that we're facing constantly in the UK. It's here in the US as well, presumably.
Absolutely. Look, I don't think it's changed much since I've been in engineering. We're still not seeing enough women and people of color in this space. But here's a bragging right I will tell you about Maryland. We have 4 HBCUs there. Morgan State University graduates the highest percentage of black engineers in the nation. We're very proud of that.
Yeah. Well, we were talking to Tom from ASE last night, and he was reminding us that the number of presidents of the ASE who've been women over the last few years is very, very high. I think it was 8, and then another one coming through.
Okay.
Much higher than the UK Institution of Civil Engineers. I think we're on 3, going on 4, something like that. So
you're going to have to catch up with us.
absolutely, yeah. No, but I think, I mean, do you think that the current engineering is changing, of course. Yes, you still have to go out there. It's still a harsh environment in terms of going out there and working on the ground. But there's an awful lot more technology, the whole industry changing. Is it becoming more of an environment that perhaps young girls want to work in?
I am seeing that. As I mentioned, I have 3 daughters, one of which is an engineer.
Oh, wow. Well, the next question.
So I'm glad to,
You didn't put them off then?
Yes, exactly.
No, well, a lot of engineers do put their kids off.
No.
Either accidentally or on purpose, to be quite honest. So.
Well, I think one of the misconceptions about engineering is that, look, it is a very highly creative field, and that doesn't get conveyed enough to young people. That it's just amazing because it goes hand in hand. The technical aspect of it as well as the creative aspect of it, they have to come together.
But from a serious perspective, it is also an environment which is still too dangerous. Oh, it's certainly more dangerous than it should be. I know you chaired the Governor's Work Zone Safety Work Group, which is dedicated to making highways work zones safer, protecting workers, etc. I mean, what difference has that kind of group started to make?
Well, let me tell you this. In March 22nd, 2023, almost a year before the FSK bridge collapse, we had a terrible tragedy on our roadways on I-695. It was the worst work zone crash in Maryland's history, where 2 motorists were traveling over the speeds of 130 miles an hour near a work zone, instantly killed 6 transportation workers in the work zone. Immediately, the governor created the Work Zone Safety Group, which I chaired. We brought together all the stakeholders, including those that work in the construction field and engineers, and we passed the Road Worker Protection Act. And essentially what that does is it increases the amount of automated speed cameras that can be located along highways during construction, and it increased the penalties associated with it. At the current time, prior to the bill passing, it was only $40 if you were speeding in a work zone. We made it such that it's built on a tier system. Depending on how fast you're traveling, the more the penalty will be. And if there's construction workers on site, it'll double. So you can get now a penalty as high as $1,000. Wow. And since this new law has been implemented in 2 months, we've issued over 148,000 citations for speeding, and 23 drivers were recorded at traveling over 40 miles over the posted speed limit, and they received a $1,000 penalty. This isn't, to make people pay more. That's not the point of this. The point is to change the culture of driving, that you are aware when you're driving through work zones.
Because nobody goes to work to get injured or to be killed.
Yes.
And, I mean, it's a global challenge, and certainly it's something in the UK, and we talk about it whenever we go to a different country with the TIP Summit. Do you think we're getting better globally, making the construction sector safer?
I certainly hope so. You know, that's what this bill is all about. But the fact of the matter is there's a lot of drivers out there that are distracted from cell phones alone, that are impaired, that are aggressively driving at high speeds. I don't know if that's as a result of COVID and everything that came as a result of that, but this is what we're trying to change, not just through enforcement, but also educating them, and also through making sure that, you know, we bring a cultural change, and that includes engineering, so we don't put workers in harm's way. If there's any way we can decrease that conflict, we're trying to do that.
Yeah. Let's go back to the bridge and where you're going next. I mean, Maryland awarded a contract for the bridge's reconstruction. You've got a completion date scheduled for 2028, I believe. I mean, what influenced the selection of the contractor and the designer? What key features of this new bridge have you built into this?
Well, first off, we are going to keep it the same, design as it was before. But the biggest change we're doing is this will become the first cable-stayed bridge that Maryland will have. The reason why we're trying to keep the design the same level, the footprint, is because we want to get through the NEPA process, right? The exclusionary categorical exclusion permit. So we can get through it a lot quicker and be able to get on
This is the footprint in the river, so you're using the same spans,
yes.
etc. Yeah,
Exactly.
but a different structural system.
Right.
I mean, is that about? I mean, presumably building in a greater amount of resilience is key to that. I mean, what other factors are you considering when you have a blank sheet of paper to start again?
Well, one of the things, of course, is we're going to follow whatever standards and regulations that the industry has set forward about building a safe bridge. And those are the same things that we did when the original bridge was built in 1977. But depending on the standards now, it'll shift to that.
And the use of a cable stay system, is that about accelerating the construction program?
Yes, that's
Because
correct.
2028, it's not very far away.
No.
I mean, I don't want to break it to you. It's only 3 years.
It is, but one thing I will say is, look, when we came out with this date and these cost estimates, it was approximately about 2 weeks after the bridge collapsed. Okay, so we didn't have a lot of information. Not only do we have a bridge and structure that's lying in the water that we have to do demolition to take apart, then we got to rebuild again.
Yeah.
So these estimates that came about, keep in mind, again, we didn't have a lot of information. So
Yeah, well, we're currently looking at a estimated cost, I think, of $1.7 trillion. Is that
billion.
Billion,
Yeah.
sorry, apologies, yes. The things,
It's only off by one letter.
Inflation,
Yeah,
inflation. $1.7 billion, yeah, my apologies. I mean, how is the state financing a project like that?
Well, we are happy to report that the United States Congress is going to fully fund the construction of this bridge. As many of you may recall, during the continuing resolution that they passed in December of 2024, it was agreed that they will fund the bridge.
Right. So, were there any other kind of any other procurement routes considered? You know, did you ever look at private financing, for instance?
Well, right now, in order to expedite the construction of this bridge, we are doing what's called a progressive design build. So that means that whoever the contractor that we hired will be there from the planning stage all the way to the construction stage. And because it's progressive, the procurement process makes it a little bit more, to expedite the process.
Yeah. Because hitting that 2028 date, I imagine, is really important for the economy.
Is.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
What about technology? What sort of technologies are you leveraging to try to accelerate the design of this, geospatial mapping? We're here with Bentley Systems, obviously.
Yeah.
They've got a lot of technologies to offer, but are you using a lot more technology, drones, centralized data management, etc.?
That would be a question I think that would have to be posed to MDOT, but I did pose to them whether they're going to use AI as part of this effort because look, I know AI is kind of coming into the civil engineering aspect. But when it comes to just doing sequencing of construction and other elements, I think it can play a big role in that.
Yeah. And I suppose making sure that when you come up with the solution and the design, that you are meeting all the community needs.
Absolutely. The community plays a vital role in whatever product that we're going to deliver.
And is there a process of asking the community what they want? How do you go about that?
I think they are meeting with the community and having roundtable discussions. I know one of the things that the community would have liked to have seen is a bike path along the bridge, but the minute you do that, you're changing the footprint. The minute you change the footprint, you're talking about going through the entire NEPA process. That's just going to further delay the bridge.
And that's delay you don't need to do. So looking ahead then, just to round us out here, what would you say are the key lessons that state officials have really learned from this disaster?
I think what we learn is how vital communication is. You have to do it as often as possible, be as transparent as possible, and everything that's done is through partnership, right? And at the end of the day, infrastructure, as I said, is about people. It's not about concrete and steel and asphalt. It's about delivering for the people. And you have to approach government in a compassionate and empathetic manner in order to meet the needs of all.
Is there also a sense that it underlines the absolute vital nature of infrastructure and investment in infrastructure?
Yes, of course. You know, the ability for us to really focus in on infrastructure is really our ability to grow the economy, to meet the needs of our community and our residents. I mean, as I said, transportation creates jobs. Transportation connects people to communities.
Yeah.
It's about how we approach environment. I mean, it's all of it together.
Yeah, I mean, this event today is called Transforming Infrastructure Performance.
Yeah.
I mean, clearly a collapse like this really has changed Moreland's approach. Well, perhaps it hasn't. It's changed the approach to infrastructure management. I mean, what advice would you give, maybe people in the room here, infrastructure professionals, about actually transforming their management of infrastructure to manage assets in a way which is more effective, more efficient, and perhaps safer?
Yeah, you know, I think the fact that all of you are here is very important because it really is about learning and growing from others. Look, I hope that you never have to face a tragedy in your state or where you live like we faced with the FSK Bridge. But given what we're going through, I hope that becomes a learning experience for all of you to take away. And just being here, listening to others, that's how you grow. You know, you can't just sit in your silos and sit behind your computer and think that's where everything lies. It's really about interacting with one another, face to face. I know we do a lot of interaction digitally, but I think we really have to be face to face to understand the needs of others.
And going right back to what we talked about around serving communities, I mean, how do you ensure, and what recommendations do you give to the people here to make sure that they are making their investments really work hard for those communities?
And again, it's to understand what are your community needs, right? Look, I know as an engineer in the past, I was trained to think that, okay, we got to move vehicles. That's what our job is. That's no longer the case anymore. It's about moving people as safely as possible. And moving people is a whole lot different than just moving vehicles.
Yeah.
And so I think you have to be able to adapt to the new conditions of what your community needs are. What one community wants in one location may be totally different from somewhere else. And we need to be very adaptive to that. We can't be so set in our ways about what we think is right for them. It's about hearing what they think is best for them.
And whether you're a politician or an engineer, it's that top of mind making people's lives better.
Absolutely.
Lieutenant Governor, thank you so much for sharing your thoughts with us today at this Transforming Infrastructure Performance Summit. Round of applause, thank you very much indeed.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
I hope that was sufficiently nerded out for you.
All right.
Thank you very much.
I did.
Mark, over
Thank
to
you, and thank you, Lieutenant Governor. It's three really important points that caught me. One, I obviously see a lot of projects that come across my desk, as I said, with award winners, and I actually saw the case study because the DOT used our software to reroute the vehicles after that fateful day. So you've put a great more context into that for me, so thank you. The other was quite an interesting discussion we had last night about the intelligent client and what is an intelligent client. So you very much touched on that, and that is going to be an interesting discussion this afternoon, so I won't spoil that. And third most, the event today, communication. It is all about communication. If we don't communicate, we are not going to improve. So thank you very much. We're honored to have you here. So moving on. First of all, two things. One, if you'd like to follow the agenda, it is actually on the IPA website. So if you Google Infrastructure Policy Advancement and the event, you'll see the agenda today on there. So that was remiss of me, so sorry for that. And please don't stand, there's plenty of seats. We'll break some more out, there's some down the front. Come in, please do take a seat. So with that, I'd like to now move on to the next speaker, if I may. And it's a great honor to actually introduce now to the stage the Mayor of San Antonio, Ron Nuremberg. Please, thank you. There we go.
Thank you again to Bentley for having us. As a mayor of a city, the 7th largest city in the United States, I can tell you that the work that is being done on weekends like this is truly transformative for communities like ours. I'm going to talk about something that's a little bit different than the actual structures that we all build. Today, I'm going to explain how I know 1.5 million heroes, the residents of San Antonio, Texas. But if I can paint an earlier picture of San Antonio for a minute, the year was 2020. Unemployment stood at 3.7%. A few months prior, we had just announced our best quarter of economic development and job creation in nearly 2 decades. Our city was and remains the fastest growing in the nation. Yet at the same time, 60,000 people per week relied on our food bank to keep food on the table. Only 26% of our workforce had a post-secondary degree or credential, and just about the same number, 1 in 4 adults, were considered functionally illiterate. Worse yet, those statistics were all from February 2020. And if you'll remember, that was 1 month before our job market, our educational landscape, and so much more were upended by the COVID-19 pandemic. Within just a few weeks, 120,000 residents, now double, were in our food bank lines, and unemployment spiked to 13%. The signs of our pre-COVID crisis were always there, and I'm sure if you look hard enough, they were there in your community as well. But the cracks in our city's economic foundation, just as they were in so many cities across this country, were now laid bare. This is why we called it a reckoning. Simply put, San Antonio had a severe underemployment problem, and it's one that no one can afford to ignore. The New York Times ran a heartbreaking photograph from one of San Antonio's largest food distribution events during the height of the pandemic, and it was shot by San Antonio Express News photographer William Luther. You can see it behind me. It went viral in the Times and other places. For a city who struggles with poverty that had been the source of documentaries since the 1960s, this still was our grave wake-up call. Despite all the growth and economic success in San Antonio over the years and the diversification of the economy that had once been primarily tourism and military, why have so many of our residents been left behind? And more importantly, where are we going from here? In the late 1970s and through the 1980s, mayors Lila Cockrell and Henry Cisneros helped bring a real bus transit system to San Antonio. In 2012, our community voted in favor of then-Mayor Julian Castro's Pre-K for SA initiative, which helped fill the gaps for families who earned too much to qualify for pre-K, free pre-K, but made too little to afford a quality education for their young children. And in 2017, just a few years prior to all this, I convened a policy task force that was charged with determining how to best increase affordable housing and housing availability across San Antonio. A bit later, I'll be discussing our 2020 voter-approved workforce development program called SA Ready to Work more in depth. But I want to draw your attention to those central pillars: housing, transit, early childhood education, and workforce development, which are how we should all begin building a new economic foundation of mobility and opportunity within our communities. Keep in mind that San Antonio is a relatively old city for American standards. We had just celebrated our tricentennial in 2018. That's a city that's 300 years old, but didn't get the shell of a transit network until 1978. And we didn't consider any large-scale human capital investments as a municipality until 2012. Is it any wonder then that San Antonio produced one of the most harrowing images of the pandemic's fallout? What we realized is that a new course was needed, and was needed fast. San Antonio, I want to tell you a little bit about my city first. It is blessed with an indomitable sense of community, an impenetrable spirit of sacrifice, both of which had seen the city through its 200-year floods in a span of just 4 years, among numerous other tragedies. We have cheered together for 5 NBA championships in a small market that was never supposed to even see one. And we have always endured and celebrated together as one big family. We're also a military city. Those unique traits would serve us well as we set about to find the answers to the known past and the unknown future. So we formed city-county pandemic working groups that established a framework around the 4 pillars I mentioned earlier, all in the spirit of taking care of one another. But let's face it, we were late, beyond late, getting into the game, mulling solutions to our long-standing systemic failures in the middle of a once-in-a-generation global pandemic. We would need to accelerate the pace at which we provided opportunity for all without tax burdening our already overburdened residents. And the driving question is, how can you boost affordability measures for the people who need it most without increasing costs somewhere down the road? To simplify a bit, my answer to that question is that you bet everything on the potential of your people. Why not ask the public to invest not just in their neighborhoods, but in their actual neighbors? 7 months after the pandemic gripped the world, we took 3 sales tax referenda to voters: an 8-year renewal and expansion of an existing pre-K for SA program, a 5-year utilization of existing sales tax, another 1/8 cent, for a new job training program, and then a permanent reallocation of sales tax starting the year after, actually starting next year, to expand a bus system into a modern multimodal transit system. All of these votes were about reallocating existing sales tax levies without any new or increased taxes. This was indeed a reckoning with our past and getting our priorities straight once and for all for the future, creating economic opportunity for all of San Antonio so that hardworking San Antonians would be able to thrive. It was about ensuring that those images that we saw that defined San Antonio's peril during the height of the pandemic could be turned around into stories of economic resilience. And so the results: the pre-K for SA expansion was approved with 73% of the vote. Transit was boosted by 68% of the vote. And mind you, this is in the height of the pandemic in November of 2020. In our new workforce development initiative, promising to retrain unemployed or underemployed residents for future-proof careers so they weren't so close to the brink of economic collapse that would put them in a line like that, surprised many cynical pundits with 77% approval. A few months later, in May of 2021, we asked voters to change our city's charter so that bonds could be executed for our first ever affordable housing bond. Voters approved that charter change, and a year later, our first ever housing affordability bond was approved in May of 2020, with just under 60% of the vote. Altogether, between 2020 and 2022, voters approved a little less than $2 billion of physical and human infrastructure investments above and beyond the city's annual budgets without raising taxes. Between 2022 and 2024, they approved 3 sales tax referenda, 6 bonds, and would go on to approve 7 charter amendments to help us do this work, all without new or increased taxes. We reassessed our existing priorities, and we started putting our money where our mouths were, because we dared to do something about what many communities simply just talk about. But with that level of voter confidence now, you have to deliver. So let's talk about the largest municipal job training effort in the entire country, which is our San Antonio Ready to Work program. It was ambitious from the start. The funding accrued from the 1/8 cent of a sales tax over nearly 5 years would afford nearly 40,000 people to be trained. We opted not to reinvent the wheel on job training, leaning on an array of existing vendors to upskill the workforce, and we decided on a lighter civilian personnel load to help administer the program. The result was an incredibly efficient framework to help individuals train for better earnings and a better quality of life. When you consider that one of the leading economic mobility indicators for children in America is having a parent who is stably employed, the positive effects we knew would cascade down through generations of San Antonians. But before the successes and the progress that I'm going to describe later, let's discuss one of the many setbacks and a recommendation I will make to you if you're considering doing work like this in your own community. The program was pitched as a 4.5-year revenue collection, but initial communications and press muddled into the perception of a program that would take just the same amount of time to execute, delivering tens of thousands of jobs seemingly overnight. That's not how the world works. Many of you know workforce development isn't nearly that simple. Participants who need training to break through cycles of poverty are living real lives, every one of them. They have real challenges, and they need real help. Some may need literacy training. Others may have a need for childcare or transportation assistance. Some may have mental health issues, complications from serving in our armed forces, or other barriers that make applying a single lens to every person virtually impossible. Each one of those barriers could be the cause of not starting or not finishing a path to a better paying career. So the Ready to Work program was designed to help with all of that, bringing in nonprofits as part of the individualized solutions for each one of those thousands of participants. Layer in the fact that we were creating an entire workforce ecosystem that included intake specialists, wraparound services, and career counseling, while marrying prospective employees with training providers and employers. Yes, this is going to be intensive, individualized work for each person, and it's going to take some time. Communicate that. So my recommendation is, doing this kind of work, make the promise that you will help people efficiently and effectively, but don't let anyone dictate the speed with which you provide help to those who need it the most. After all, each cycle of poverty, and that is represented by each one of those cars, each cycle of poverty that is broken creates generational change, making it more likely that children and grandchildren who would have been repeating the cycle of poverty will now go on to achieve their potential, educationally and economically. So let's talk about now where we are with Ready to Work. Despite the daunting challenges of reversing cycles of poverty, let alone doing that at the scale of the 7th largest city in the country, over 3/4 of our voters believed in that vision, and they were right to do so. Since its launch, the program has now over 11,600 enrollees, over 3,500 of which have already graduated from their prospective trainings, and as of Tuesday, 2,252 individuals are now in better paying jobs. Perhaps even more astounding, over 1,100 individual unique employers in our city have hired Ready to Work participants, demonstrating that the impact of a program like this that can have on your region's small businesses. Even still, the success of this program has been an economic development boon for San Antonio. A British heavy equipment manufacturer, JCB, just announced a 500,000 square foot manufacturing facility and pledged to hire 1,500 jobs, citing Ready to Work as one of the many reasons why they chose San Antonio. Guidehouse, global consulting firm, announced a new facility and another 1,000 jobs, in part because of our workforce development efforts. We know Standard Aero, the largest aircraft MRO in the world, has expanded and now made a 60-year bet on San Antonio for the same reasons. The list goes on. So let me illustrate now, back down to earth. Let me illustrate why this is so important by painting the picture of who we are serving with SA Ready to Work. This is the profile of an SA Ready to Work participant, the average participant. She is a woman of color raising children in a household that has earnings on less than $14,000 a year. So I'll say that again. She is a woman of color raising children in a household that is earning on average $14,000 a year total. You can imagine the challenges that that household faces, particularly the children. It's a life of dependency and struggle where multiple poverty wage jobs still isn't enough, where the children and grandchildren who come after are statistically more likely to be in the same situation. It is a life in which one event puts them back in this line. And so the cycle of poverty grows exponentially. That's what was happening in San Antonio, and I dare tell you, that's what happens in your city as well, and in so many cities across the country. But SA Ready to Work changes those outcomes. That mom, after she finishes training and is placed into a Ready to Work job, on average, is now earning $44,000 a year with benefits. And she has a credential to keep building her career. That is now a life of financial independence and economic mobility. Now those children have their mom back and get the nurturing they need to fulfill their own potential. And now that negative cycle has turned into a virtuous cycle of economic empowerment. It's easy to understand how this program changes outcomes for the entire community, and why I believe that this investment will have a transformative impact on our community for the long haul. Nevertheless, I'm in politics, and I know that when you commit public dollars to human capital, it's not as easy to see the progress as it is to see the progress on a roadway or a building or an airport. So it's understandable that some people want to know, how much is this going to cost? So here's your answer: just over $6,000. That's it. From intake to training to financial assistance to job training and placement, the average spend per participant is about $6,000 for a lifetime of impact that expands with each passing generation. For just the 2,000 San Antonians who are already on new jobs, the collective increase in incomes alone, which goes back into our community's economic activity, remember, is $62 million over this year, 1 year. A 2021 study of the program estimates that total economic impact of the Ready to Work program during the working careers of the participants that we will train is $13.1 billion. If you're not getting the full picture yet and the economic metrics don't matter as much and return on investment isn't as compelling, let me tell you about one of our workforce heroes. That is Mr. Sergio Garza, AKA Sage. He's on the screen. Sage had been a recipient in several of our local food bank distributions, like what you see, always riding shotgun with his family because he didn't have a driver's license. At one of those food bank events, Sage received a flyer for the Ready to Work program. And here's where the real magic of the program lies. Just as voters had decided to bet on their neighbors, Sage decided to make a bet on himself. Ready to Work supported Sage's initiative to earn his GED, then his driver's license, and eventually his commercial driver's license. After completing his CDL training, he attended a job fair and knew just where he wanted to work. Earning the first salary of his life in his late 30s, Sage had become a truck driver for the San Antonio Food Bank, where he had first received the information about the program that would help turn his life around. That's the picture of Sage up there, and so I'd like for you to give Sage a big round of applause. I know he's not here, so he's not going to pop up. He's not here, but he's here in spirit, because Sage's story is one of thousands now in our community. In order to build the strongest cities in America, and I'm speaking to every city now, you have to bet big on your people. It's back-breaking work. You'll have lots of critics. On both systems and participants, it's very hard, but the rewards will last for generations. So I'll leave you now with one final thought and one quote on this matter. The thought is, the raw talent in your community has always been there. You just have to give your neighbors their shot. The quote, We live in a world in which we need to share responsibility. It's easy to say, it's not my child, not my community, not my world, not my problem. Then there are those who see the need and respond. I consider those my heroes. That was Mr. Rogers. And that, transportation infrastructure partners, all of you, is why the 1.5 million residents of San Antonio are my heroes. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. I think that really sums up the word, if you invest, they will come. I mean, that is some great leadership, so thank you for that. I believe we've got time for a couple of questions from the floor. Rory, Dan, any questions? Anybody like to ask the mayor a question? Rory, Dan, one of you sprint over, please. Bit faster.
I can say it with my chest. Thank you so much, Mr. Mayor. Billy Terry from Atkins Realis. Had a great time at the Alamo Bowl, by the way.
Oh, good.
Really good. I just want to ask a question. One of the things that I think we find across all disciplines is the reality of technical capacity, moving people in the workforce, and then also soft skills, right? You noted an individual probably for the first time in like getting up, going to work, being on time. Can you talk a little bit about the importance of soft skills development,
Absolutely.
being in an office environment, dealing with other individuals, and how important that is in the advancement of a person's workforce?
We hear that all the time, and so we do roundtables with all of our employers, and we do it by sector as well. And part of this is that they help us to forecast what we need to be pushing through the pipeline in terms of the skill sets and career trajectories, and they're all aligned with our emerging growing industries so that people have jobs. When they, in the front end, they know there's a job waiting for them. But one of the things that we hear a lot about are those soft skills and how those soft skills take time to develop even into the job. So part of the unseen effort in Ready to Work is addressing those soft skills, interview skills, workplace environment, culture issues with the participants during the intake process and as they go through their career navigation. That's definitely a part of this program, and I'll also tell you that our Ready to Work navigation continues after job placement. Again, this is very individualized work, but all of the participants, once they're placed in a job, will have that career navigation as they're in their new employers for another year, so that they're settled in and they get, they have an opportunity for retention and all of that. So it's definitely contemplated and I think an undervalued part of this program.
Any other questions? Bill.
Thank you for being here, Your Honor. Appreciate it. First of all, congratulations on your workforce readiness, your food security programs. These programs are amazing, and congratulations to you and the team and to the citizens of San Antonio. So that's great. How can, you have a lot of people in the technology business in this room. How can we help the citizens of San Antonio as they go through this journey? And that was my question. So
the same thing I would tell the employers who are already in San Antonio: hire our folks. We've worked a lot with HR departments because a lot of our employees, our participants, are non-traditional. They're mid-career. They've got challenges that they ultimately had to overcome. But that's a motivated employee. So hire our people. Also share with us data about job projections. What are you forecasting? What do you need? And the economic development folks consider this an employer-driven program. We want to fill the jobs that are available. And I should tell you, in an infrastructure setting, a lot of these jobs are construction and trades. A lot of them are engineers. A lot of them are entering into career fields at the entry level that will take them into higher levels in your industry. So this is about making sure that we have people to do the jobs that we're creating now. And again, I can talk about all the human impacts of this, but it's really important for business as well. But be involved in the program, whether it's in San Antonio or elsewhere, because this program is for you guys as well.
Good. Please, can you pass the mic down?
Thank you. That was really very inspirational.
Thank
You for sharing it with us. I have a question. How long, on average, do you estimate it takes for someone to get through the program?
Yeah.
And secondly, how did you bring all parts of San Antonio together to stand behind you with this initiative?
The second part's a little harder to answer, and a lot of it's intangible. I could give you my theories. One of the theories is it's in the blood, collaboration in our city. But also we built up a significant amount of public trust during our handling of the pandemic and the dark days of the pandemic. I was on TV every single day giving our community updates. We followed, the science and the medical professionals, and I think our community saw us being practical about how we were handling very difficult things. The first question is really important for people to understand, and that's where I don't think the perception of the program matched reality much. Because I mentioned that you have a 4.5-year program and think everybody's going to have a job after 4.5 years. That's not how it works. So the short-term training can last as little as 6 weeks, a couple of months. And that's, Sage was on the job for a long time because he got a CDL and he got a certification to drive equipment. So that program, quick and pushes people through, but some of the people are in there for year-long certifications. Others are there for 2-year degrees, and in some cases 4-year degrees, because we are training for medical professionals. We're training for financial services that need quite a bit more training elements to it. So it can be anywhere from 6 months to, 6 weeks to up to even 4 years. And so one of the ways that we've improved on telling the story of this is that we've improved our dashboard. We have a real-time dashboard. I could send that to you about where we are each day of this program in real time, and we've improved it over time. I've asked them for an aging chart so people could see how many people are coming out, let's say within the next six weeks, how many are coming out in the next, or 6 months, within a year, 2 years, 4 years, so they can see that there are people in the pipeline that you shouldn't expect them to have a job next month if they're in the middle of their training.
Thank you.
I think we've got one more question.
Mayor, thank you so much. Zach Campbell, Arcadis, and formerly New York City Hall staffer. So I want to ask, I think you almost downplayed a little bit how difficult it can be sometimes to unlock some of the expense funding components that support a lot of the capital investments. I think we're in a room that's very supportive of the ideas of making investments both in infrastructure and in the communities and the folks who both benefit from that and build it.
Yeah.
But can you talk a little bit about some of the most effective techniques to leverage and get buy-in on some of these things in perhaps less supportive environments?
Well, I'd love for all of you to spend time with Ross, because he helps with an organization called Accelerator for America that works on exactly this issue. In my experience, and we've done some really difficult things. Our city has had a history of rejecting transit initiatives, of saying no to important sales tax allocations, and so we've turned all that around. And I'll just share with you, I've been on the ballot 9 times. We've had 12 bond propositions, 7 charter amendments, 5 sales tax initiatives. They've all passed, all of them. And that's because we've built successively public trust by executing, but also the key component involving community up front. So even this Ready to Work program, we brought our community together to talk about why we needed to do something. I brought in experts and educational pillars in our community, like the chancellor for our community college district. So we brought people together to help us figure out the answer to the question. The question was in that picture. We didn't dictate where we wanted to go. We had the community involved with where the outcome was. And we've done that for everything. Bond propositions for infrastructure. The pre-K initiative started in the same way. And I think that generates trust, goodwill, and also buy-in from the public that ultimately has to approve it.
Cool. Thank you. One final question for me is sort of outside looking in, going back to that data and the dashboard. You really got my attention there. The longer this program runs, the greater the data you have. Therefore, does that give you the insight to fill upcoming skills gaps, upcoming leadership, and extending the program from being a 12-month leadership to 2-year, 3-year, bringing in engineers and
100%. And I'm glad you mentioned that, because this is about the real world economy. We're not training people so they'll be better educated. That's not the idea. We're training people so that they can, number one, fill the jobs that we have available, and businesses will prosper from that, but also so they can thrive economically and no longer be close to the brink of catastrophe. And so if it's going to be modeled after real world economy, then there are jobs that we're not even thinking of that we need to train for. We've got to be dynamic and flexible. So that's the key with having all these roundtables and having connection with employers, is that the program will flex based on where the needs, the job needs are in the economy, so people actually get what this program is trying to deliver.
Lovely. And again, as I said, thank you for your leadership. It's
Thank you very much.
You'll stay around for a cup of tea?
I've got an early flight, unfortunately.
Okay.
I'm still on the job.
But I'd like to say we'll take a comfort break now, 10, 15 minutes. So if you'd like to grab some refreshments and pop back in, hopefully you'll stay for those 10 or 15
Sure,
minutes.
absolutely.
That'd be lovely.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, everybody. Thank you. Really good. Really good.